It all began with a basket. And this basket was a special basket because it actually belonged to her grandmother. There was a little girl who lived on one side of the forest, and her grandmother lived on the opposite side of the forest. And one day her mother came to her and told her, "Little Red Riding Hood, your grandmother is sick. She needs to have some muffins." It all began with a basket. And this basket was a special basket because it actually belonged to her grandmother. There was a little girl who lived on one side. It all began with a basket. And this basket was a special basket because it actually belonged to her grandmother. There was a little girl who lived on one side of the forest, and her grandmother lived on the opposite side of the forest. And one day her mother came to her and told her, "Little Red Riding Hood, your grandmother is sick. She needs to have some muffins." Because muffins are the only thing that made grandmother feel better, and she lives all alone on the other side of the forest. So, Little Red Riding Hood, they called her that because she had beautiful red hair, and she wore this red cape that was almost the color of this. Look at this. I have a plant here that is the color of Red Riding Hood's cape. Do you see this? This is the color of her cape. And she had beautiful, flaming red hair. She went with her basket to the muffin drawer, and she pulled out all of the good muffins, the cinnamon muffins, the blueberry muffins, and the Pop-Tart muffins that had sprinkles. And she took them, and her mother said, "Now be very careful. You're leaving. You're going out into the world where it's dangerous, and the forest is between our homes. And the forest is dangerous because there are wild animals there, like the bears that live in the big bear cave in the middle." So she said, "Be very careful. Don't talk to anybody who stops you. And go all the way around on the long trail that skips the bear cave in the middle of the forest, because there's bears in the bear cave, and they love muffins. They also love to eat little girls. There are other dangerous animals in the forest too. There's hippos and rhinos and kangaroos and wolves and whatever, but be careful of those bears." So, Little Red Riding Hood went skipping along with the muffins in her muffin basket. And as she was skipping along, she sang her little song. "La la 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 la, I'm going to see my grandmother's house." And as she skipped, she made a lot of noise because she tripped sometimes. She was not a graceful skipper. She was still learning, and she fell a few times, and all of the muffins went bouncing around. And you've heard muffins bounce. They make a lot of noise bouncing in the leaves. And so there was a wild animal nearby named Big. His name was Big Bad Wolf, and he was hungry. He was really actually quite skinny and hungry because he hadn't had anything to eat for a while, because the bears in the middle of the forest eat a lot. So he heard the magical, wonderful sound of blueberry muffins bouncing in leaves, and he thought, oh, there's muffins. And he could smell them. Because when a blueberry muffin bounces, it squeezes out some of that lovely goodness, and it goes into the air, and it went wafting through the trees, and it got over to his nose and went and tickled his nose, and his nose said, there's blueberry muffins. And he followed his nose, because wolves can do that. It's on the end of their face, so they just go forward. But the nose guides them. And the nose guided him through until he saw a little girl with a basket filled with muffins. And she was skipping along and falling. And every time she fell, the muffins would bounce, bounce, bounce. He wanted one of those muffins so bad. He wanted all the muffins. He hadn't eaten anything for about 2.5 weeks, and that's a long time. If you try going without anything, because he didn't normally eat muffins, but he hadn't had anything in about 2.5 weeks. If you go that long, your stomach starts to just really hurt. And it kind of like bounces against your backbone and your ribs and goes, where's the food? And his stomach was saying, there's muffins, you better eat some muffins right now. And he didn't know what to do, because he knew wolves know that people are dangerous because they sometimes like to shoot at you or trap you and make you into their pet. And he didn't want either of those, but he really wanted muffins. And she was a little girl. He watched for a while. He followed and he watched and he watched and he followed and he peered behind the trees. And he just imagined those lovely muffins in his mouth. Oh, you can imagine, too. They tasted so good. They're really, really the best muffins. Her mother was a wonderful muffin baker, and he could smell it. So finally, he gathered up his courage, and he went out in front on the trail, and he pretended he was wounded. He fell down, and he limped and fell, and she was skipping along, and she stopped. A wolf! A wolf! A wolf! Like that. And she grabbed her basket up, and she was very scared. She said, that's a wolf, and wolves are dangerous because they eat little girls sometimes. And the wolf, he stayed there anyway. Who's that coming? I can't see you. Where are you? And she didn't stop because she remembered her mother said, don't stop and talk to anybody. And so she grabbed her basket, and she, instead of skipping this time, she was very good at running. And so she ran. And she ran so fast, she almost lit that wolf's tail on fire because he was laying in the road. So now he had a burnt tail and a crazy hungry stomach. And the little girl was gone, and the muffins were gone, and all he could do was smell the smell of those lovely blueberry muffins. And the cinnamon, but he didn't like cinnamon ones as much as the blueberry muffins. And his tail, ow! Oh, every time he moved, his tail hurt. What was he going to do? The little girl, she ran. And she ran and she ran. Little Red Riding Hood, she just took off. And that cape was just flapping in the wind. And she was going to get to her grandmother's house with these muffins before anything got her. Well, luckily, the wolf knew some shortcuts because he lives in the forest. It's his backyard. It's his front yard. It's his living room, really. So he went through, the little trail he knows and down through, and he slid down a little thing. It's like a big slide. It'd be really fun if you weren't hungry, but he went down it anyway, and he got to Grandma's house. And from her song, she was singing all about Grandma being sick and everything, and he thought, well, Grandma's normally a pretty good shot, but she's really sick. She's probably in bed. He got to her door before Little Red Riding Hood because she was taking the long road to avoid the bear cave. And he knocked on the door. And he thought as quickly as he possibly could. He thought, what would Grandma open the door for? What would she open the door for? And he heard a voice inside, a very weak old woman's voice said, who is at my door? And he thought as quickly as he could, he said, it's the cake delivery company with a cake for you to get better. So please let us in so we can put this cake in your house so you can eat it. It was pretty obvious she would open the door for that. She said, "The door is unlocked. Please come in with the lovely cake. I'm very, very hungry," because when grandmas get sick, they want baked goods. He opened the door and went in, and we don't know what happened exactly, but when Little Red Riding Hood got there later, she came up to the door. She was so relieved to finally get to grandmother's house. She had been skipping, and after she saw that wolf, she ran. She ran as fast as she could, and she had all the muffins. She counted them, and they were all there. And she went up to the door, and she knocked. And she heard a voice inside, and it was an old woman's voice, very weak. Oh, poor grandmother was so sick. "Who is it?" the voice said. And she said, "Grandmother, it's me. Please let me in. There's wolves out here." And she listened, and the old woman said, "Oh, Little Red Riding Hood, please come in. The door is unlocked." And she opened the door, and she poked her head in, and she saw in the corner was grandmother's bed, and grandmother was all covered in blankets laying there. She said, "Grandmother, it's dangerous out here, but I've brought you a basket filled with lovely baked goods." And the lump moved and said, "Oh, I'm so happy. Please put those muffins on the counter and start on your way home, because I'm very, very sick and I don't want you to get whatever I have." And she said, "You're very sick, grandmother?" And she said, and the lump moved again a little bit and said, "Oh, I'm very, very, very sick. Please just put the muffins on the counter and run home as fast as you can, because there's wolves out there and they're very dangerous, very dangerous." But poor Little Red Riding Hood thought, grandmother is so sick and I feel so bad for her. I'm going to put the counter. She put these on the counter, and she walked over to grandmother's bed, because grandmother probably needed a foot massage. A foot massage always helped grandmother feel better. Always. Ever since she was still a little girl, but she only remembered that grandmother loved foot massage. She said, "Grandmother, would you like me to massage your feet? Where's your lotion?" And that's when she kind of noticed the room was a bit of a mess. Grandmother didn't usually keep the room so messy. She thought, grandmother must be so sick. Look at this big mess. The chairs were tipped over. Grandmother didn't normally leave her chairs tipped over. She must have been so sick she couldn't do anything but lay down. She felt so sad. She went over to grandmother's pillow, and grandmother had covered her head with her blanket. She said, "Grandmother, can I help you in any way?" And the lump moved and jostled and said, No, I don't want a foot massage. I just want you to go home as fast as you can so that you don't get this terrible sickness that I have. I don't know what it's called, but it's probably a lot of letters. A lot of letters. And she said, "Grandmother, you're not British. Why are you speaking with an accent?" She said, "That's a symptom of the disease. I didn't have an accent, but now I do. Please go home." And Little Red Riding Hood went and pulled at the blanket a little bit, and an ear poked out. Now, grandmother, she thought in her head, how big were grandma's ears before? She said, "Grandmother, what big ears you've got." And grandmother said, the better to hear you with. Now run on home, please, as quickly as you can. I don't want you to get sick, little girl." And that's when she noticed grandmother's eye, a big yellow eye. And she thought, Grandma did not have yellow eyes. That's a different kind of eye. She said, "Grandmother," she was getting suspicious. She said, "Grandmother, what big eyes you've got." And the voice from under the covers said, "The better to see you with. Now go on home, little girl, and leave the muffins here." And then she saw a little bit of the corner of Grandma's mouth. And it didn't look like it normally did because her lips were unusually dark colored. And her tongue was still pink, but it was longer. And then she saw the tooth. A humongous sharp tooth. And she thought in her head, how many times have I seen Grandmother's teeth? Maybe she has new dentures. Because, sometimes grandmas have fake teeth, and maybe she has a fake tooth that's long. And she was thinking in her head about that and said, "Grandmother, why do you have such big teeth?" And that's when the voice changed, and the blanket started to fall away, and she heard a voice say, "The better to eat you with." And it was the wolf. And he wasn't hurt at all. He was a big, bad wolf. And he was so mad because his plan wasn't working. He just wanted the little girl to go home. Well, now he was going to have muffins, but not just muffins. He was going to have little girl too. And it was all her fault. And so he jumped out of the bed, and she leapt and jumped up onto the counter, and she grabbed her basket, and she started running out the door. And that's when the wolf realized he was about to not have muffins or little girl. He jumped out of the bed, and he pulled off the nightgown. He didn't know even why he bothered putting it on. He'd been hiding under the covers, and he took off the dumb bonnet, and he threw it out. He threw it all, and he started running. But as he ran, he could feel the kicking in his stomach, because Grandma was in there. He had eaten Grandma already, and she was kicking and punching his stomach from the inside, and it kind of hurt because his stomach was already really hungry before that. And then it said, "What did you feed me? I didn't want to eat an old lady that's going to beat me up." And he started running as she's bouncing around in his stomach, and she didn't like bouncing in his stomach because she was sick, remember, and she wanted some muffins, and she's punching the inside of his stomach as he's running. And Little Red Riding Hood is running and running, and she didn't the way that she came was on the long road, that came a long way around. Well, this time she ran straight, and that's the road that goes directly down to the bear cave. And she was running too fast, and she didn't pay attention. And she forgot everything her mother had said because the wolf was after her. So she was running and running, and a couple of times she tripped, and she picked up all the muffins as fast as she could, and she kept running, and he was running after her. "Stop, little girl, I want those muffins, give me those muffins, ow, ow." And he kept on getting punched in the stomach from inside, and it was a bad thing. And she went running, and then she saw the big black hole and realized, wait a second, it's getting dark, and she realized she was inside the bear cave. Oh no. And she looked around, and it was dark, and she kind of squinted, and that's when she felt a little wind on her cheek, and she turned and she looked, and she kind of saw. It looked like maybe a face, like two black dots, and and then there were like rows of teeth below, and she realized it was a bear face, and it was going and it was about to eat her because she smelled like little girl and muffins, which is a wonderful thing for bears to eat. And she turned and she started to run the other way, and she saw the wolf. Oh no! The wolf came bouncing along into the bear cave, and she jumped through the wolf's legs. And then the wolf couldn't slow down. And Grandma was kicking so hard, she kicked him, boom, and right onto one of the bear's teeth. And it just caught him just right there, like right there. And it just, and it ripped open, and Grandma spilled out onto the ground. And wolves normally aren't what bears eat because they stay away from them. But that bear, he hadn't had anything to eat in 3 weeks. And he'd been trying to hibernate in the middle of summertime like that for a little bit because he figured, well, if I just go to sleep and wake up later, maybe there'll be food. Now he'd woken up, and sure enough, there was food. So he ate the wolf. And Grandma and Little Red Riding Hood went running as fast as they could out of the cave. And you know what? Even Grandma, even though she was so sick, it turned out that whatever she had, all you had to do to make it better was run. And then they went back to her house and they opened up the basket and they ate the blueberry muffins. And it was such a wonderful end to an almost terrible day. And poor Wolf, he got inside the bear's stomach and he tried to punch and kick, but the bear started to punch and kick back, and so he stopped. And I think he's still there today, inside the bear cave, inside the bear's stomach, just slowly being digested. And that was the day he learned a lesson he could never use again, that if you see a little girl running through the forest with a basket of lovely food, don't stop her or talk to her, or just go the other way and continue to be hungry, because at least being hungry and alone in the forest is better than being hungry alone inside a bear's stomach, inside a bear cave, listening to the bear snore forever, I guess. And that's the end of our story. Little Red Riding Hood. Isn't it lucky that she could run so quickly?
Do you want to be having more fun? Follow the link in the description to order your own great Amazing Book Show stickers. They are fun! Stick them anywhere to add fun and laughter to all your happy, fun, worldly goodies. Ha ha, hoo hoo, ho ho, ha 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 ha, happy fun time!
We do hope you've enjoyed this great Amazing Book Show, and if you'd like to listen to further titles, please check out our other videos.
Or subscribe and continue to enjoy more of these fascinating stories.